The world financial system is as simple as can be. It can be summed up in one short sentence. You lend people money that doesn't exist and you charge them interest on it. That's it. Nothing for me sums up the scale to which we have conceded our power to control our own lives than the world financial system. I love this one, Nick. Now, one of the great diversion techniques that's used upon us is to make very simple things, which the world financial system is, sound ever so complicated. So what we have almost every night on the news, we have economists wheeled in front of television cameras, surrounded by computer screens, talking in a language we don't understand. I think it's the Chancellor's M3 policy. I thought the M3 was a motorway. I don't know, something to do with money, apparently. I don't know. It's the public sector borrowing requirement. And so they go on. Oh, God, it's boring. What's on the other side? And so we switch off, understandably. And yet, the world financial system is as simple as can be. It can be summed up in one short sentence. You lend people money that doesn't exist and you charge them interest on it. That's it. Everything else comes out of that. This world is up to its neck in debt on money that has never, does not, and will never exist. And we stand for this. The great prison that the human race lives in, as I'll come to in more detail when I look at the spiritual reactions to this, is the fear of what other people think of them. That's the prison we live in. That's the great limiter of our potential. Alongside that, when you ask people, why aren't you really doing what you really want to do with your life? Invariably they say, because I've got to pay the mortgage, mate. Understandable. So, the more you can get people, businesses and governments in debt, the more you can artificially inflate the cost of the basics of life, the more you are pressurizing people to serve your system, be a robot and a clone of it, so that they can earn the money to pay for the basics of life. This is why the world financial system has been designed as a prison.
It all comes down in the end, in terms of these society controlling institutions, to what I call the global cult, which is a global network of secret societies and semi-secret groups with ultimately, if you go deep enough in the rabbit hole, a mission control, a central organizational center. This explains why countries tend to respond to the same kind of situations in extraordinarily the same way. The thing is, if you're talking about control and the need to control, then you look at society as it's structured, and control is overwhelmingly dictated by money. Who has it and who doesn't? And if you look at a definition of freedom, well, it's choice. The more choices you can make, the freer you are. The fewer choices you can make, the less free you are. And in the way that society is structured today, what dictates choice more than anything than money? Who has it and who doesn't? So I hear people talk about how the billionaires and the billionaire corporations, etc., are all about money. Well, yes, on one level, they have a mentality that is it has an insatiable greed. But the bottom line of bottom lines is not about accumulation of money. It's accumulation of control via the weapon of money. And when you look at how this cult, in all its different expressions, brought in the money system to what it is today, it's founded on creating money out of nothing called credit and charging interest on it.
Banks are lending as a matter of course £10,000 and more for every £1,000 they actually have deposited. If everyone went to the banks tomorrow and took out what they theoretically have deposited there, the banks would be bankrupt so many times it'd be in the Guinness Book of Records. They haven't got it. So when we take out a loan, oh, please tell me, Mother, this is not true. They type in to your account the amount you've flipping loaned. That's all they do. From that moment, you start paying interest on money that doesn't exist. People say, why is the American government trillions and trillions of dollars in debt? Ridiculous. How could it possibly do that? Very simple when you see how it works. And this is how it works around the world as well. One transaction in one day in America. The American government wants to borrow, say, $1 billion more than it's actually taken in taxation. Now it's the government. It could actually print its own money interest-free if it chose to. But of course, if it did that, you're removing massive amounts of power from the global banking system, which is controlled by the same people that decide who's going to be president of the United States. So they don't print their own money interest-free. They issue an IOU to a cartel of private banks known laughably as the Central Bank of America, known as the Federal Reserve System. The Federal Reserve System is supposed to be the Central Bank of America. It is a cartel of private banks. The present head of the Federal Reserve is Alan Greenspan, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, who took over from Paul Volcker, who was there at the time of Reaganomics and Thatcherism. Paul Volcker, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations. You get the picture. So they issued the government an IOU to this cartel of private banks for $1 billion. The banks then type into the government's account $1 billion. That's all they've done. From that moment on, the American taxpayer, via the government, starts paying interest on $1 billion.
Money is overwhelmingly created by private banks issuing credit. That's how so-called money comes into circulation. So, what this means is creating credit for the principal but not the interest, is that at no point is there ever enough money, credit or otherwise, in circulation to pay back all the debt and all the interest on the debt outstanding. So people losing their homes and their businesses and their resources, etc., is built into the system on purpose. Now, when there's an expansion of the money supply, an expansion of money in circulation, Peter paying Paul, that seems, to hide it to an extent. But once you squeeze the money supply, you take money out of circulation, it becomes obvious that there's nothing like enough money in circulation to pay back all the debt. So there's people losing their homes, their resources, their things that they own, for no other reason that there simply is not enough money for everyone to pay back the debt. So what do the banks do? Ooh, we'll have that. And this has been going on for centuries, and they've hijacked the real wealth of the world by doing this.